This is an interview with Hala Simons Atkins and Lise Simons Wishner on September 17, 2005, at the Virginia Holocaust Museum in Richmond, Virginia, conducted by Patty O'Connor. Could you please state your name and place of birth?
My name is Lise Wishner, and I was born September 16, 1935.
And how old are you?
I am 70 years old.
And what languages do you speak?
I speak English and Dutch.
And then could you please state your name and place of birth?
My name is Hala Atkins, and I was born August 3rd, 1932 in Utrecht, the Netherlands.
And how old are you?
I'm 73.
And Lise, what languages do you speak? I already asked you that. I'm sorry. Hello, what languages do you speak?
Dutch and English.
Okay. Now, for either of you, where were you living before the Holocaust began?
In Utrecht, the Netherlands.
Could you describe your life before the Holocaust began?
Well, not that much. When I was 6, I went to school in the first grade, and then the war broke out. I don't have much else to say about that, really.
Can you tell me about your family at that time?
Well, we lived above a store that my father owned. Our living quarters were right above it, and our sleeping quarters and everything else. And we walked or rode our bicycles to school. I was in the 3rd grade, I believe, when the war broke out. And just normal, everyday, life in the Netherlands, as it was in those days.
What was the predominant religion in your area?
Protestant.
Probably,
Yeah.
There was some
Catholicism.
Did being a Jew before the war have any religious significance to you, or was it more a cultural significance?
Well, our grandparents were quite religious, so we went to temple, not every week, but at least on holidays. And in those days it was very, not conservative, it was really the old way where the women were separated from the men. So the men participated much more than the women, but yeah, that was basically what we did.
Did you have any non-Jewish friends before the war?
All non-Jewish friends. I did anyway.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Did you experience any anti-Semitism before the war?
No.
No, we were too young, really, to
And
understand.
there really wasn't
There
any.
wasn't any.
Our friends, we just were friends.
Yeah.
Religion didn't come into it.
Did you see that attitude change after the war began?
Not really.
Not really.
As
no.
a matter of fact, if anything, people were nicer to us, if that was at all possible. The Dutch people, anyway.
Right.
The right Dutch people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And where were you living when the Nazis invaded your country?
In the house, the same house.
When did they occupy your country?
The year?
Oh, that's a good question. 1941.
Yeah, I believe that's what
But
it was.
I don't know months. Mm-hmm.
It was, I believe, in the spring.
It's spring.
Yeah.
And how old were you when the war began in your country?
Well, I was 8 and you were about 5, right?
6, yeah.
Yeah, you were 5.
I was 5, yeah.
When the war started,
Right.
yes.
Can you describe what happened when the Germans first invaded your city, your town?
Well, it's so hard to remember those things because we were so
too
young.
small.
Yeah, our parents tried to keep everything as normal as possible for us.
Right.
And We still went to school. The only thing I remember that was different, we had to start wearing a star
Yellow
with
star.
Jew on it in Dutch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember any other restrictions that were placed on you?
No.
No, not really.
No.
We still went to school. We still, lived a comparatively normal life. As a matter of fact, I remember an incident. I don't know if you're interested in hearing that now. That I was walking to school, and in Holland, everybody rides bicycles, and two men were riding a bicycle, and they stepped off the bicycle in front of me. I don't remember if I was alone or not, and took their hats off, and saying, hey, you're something special, because I was wearing the star, and the Dutch were always very, very good.
Pro-Jewish.
Yeah. They considered us not Jewish, they considered us Dutch. We were part of them. So religious didn't matter to them. They were being attacked, we were being attacked, and we were all equal in that respect.
That's right.
Was your father allowed to continue with his business?
As far as we know.
Yeah, at the time.
Yes, at the time.
Do you know if there was any type of resistance when the Nazis invaded your city?
I'm sure there
It
was.
must have started right away.
Absolutely. The underground.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people were so against.
They banded together.
Invasion that was unheard of.
And the worst were the Dutch that turned pro-German. Yeah, they were really hated.
Yeah.
To whom did you and your family turn for help when things began to worsen?
I think that my parents had friends
They had a lot of friends
who were very
helped
active
them.
in the undergrounds, and they helped place us in our respective homes at the time.
When did you have to go into hiding?
I think it was September 1941, just before my birthday.
Right,
I remember that.
right.
And where did you hide?
Well, I guess we started people taking us to a jail. Was that the beginning?
That was later.
No,
that was later.
Where did they take us first? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't really either. I think we went directly to the Colars.
No, but we spent one night in jail.
Yeah, but that
we
was
went
after. That's when we were caught.
No, it was before. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Don't know really. I thought it was before.
Could be.
They just
I'm
spent
not
one
sure
night in jail to keep us
safe, basically.
And then we went to Colars.
And how did you get there?
The Colars?
We were just taken there by a friend of my parents who was active in the underground. How he took us there, whether we walked or took, I don't remember that.
And could you describe the family who hid you?
They were a young couple, just very recently married.
Yeah, they just had come from their honeymoon.
And
then they wanted to, the people had asked, the underground had asked them if they could keep us just for a few weeks. So then they would process us further. And that's the beginning of the story with the Collards.
Yeah. So they,
How long
a few
were you?
weeks went into a few years.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
Were you the only two who hid there?
Yes.
They took in some other people who were fleeing from one place to another and needed a place to stay overnight. Off and on.
Yeah.
But nothing permanent.
Did you have a specific hiding place, or did you live within the house?
First we lived in the house. We lived upstairs mostly in the bedrooms, and came downstairs occasionally. But towards about the third year, there was a little room up in the attic. A little triangular room with a mattress on the floor, and it had a a door that was hidden, and in case the Germans were invading the house, then we would go up there, and they closed this little door off, and you couldn't see from the outside that there was a room up there.
Did you have to go in there very often?
Well, we slept in there actually at night. Later
on,
we slept there every night just in case anybody would come during the night.
Not in the beginning,
but otherwise we spent a lot of time in the attic actually there.
They had a huge attic besides this little room we stayed in. And we stayed there quite a bit too.
Yeah, in the beginning we were even allowed to go outside sometimes in the garden.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but then later on that wasn't possible anymore.
As soon as the more soldiers came to the town.
And then they had a neighbor whose daughter was friendly with a German soldier.
So we had to be very careful.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that was no more outside for us.
Right, right.
Did you already know the family that you stayed with?
No.
No.
We never met them before.
Never.
Did you have to take on an assumed name?
No, we didn't.
No. No, because nobody was supposed to know we were there.
People that neighbors thought the Collards told them that we came from Rotterdam. We were their nieces, and we were going to stay with them for a while. So some of the people knew that we were there.
Yeah, not many, though, as few as possible.
So did anyone ever question you or suspect that you really weren't their nieces?
No, we really didn't talk to
anybody.
Was this in a city or in the country?
In the country.
Country, a little village away from Utrecht, not too far, but far enough. It was very country.
And
a lot of farms.
De Meeren.
What were some of the dangers in being in hiding? Did you recognize any of those being so young?
Not
Not really.
One wonderful thing about being a child is you really don't fear things like an adult does.
Right, and you're sort of fun and games.
And, you accept things. You really do.
Yeah, that's right. They tell you what to do or
can you imagine now
you just do it.
Doing the things we did then? It would be impossible to even imagine it. Being an adult, doing the things you did as a child, but you did.
Right.
It was part of life, and that was all. You had to
just accepted it.
How did you entertain yourselves while you were in hiding?
Well, Nettie, who had a studio upstairs, and she did a lot of artistic. She did actually leather works. She worked with leather.
She made pocketbooks.
Pocketbooks and
albums and
covers for albums and gloves and all kinds of great leather things. And we helped her. We helped her doing things. And then, of course, Harry, her husband, he taught us. We went to school, so to say. And there was a Catholic school, and he got books from the teachers at the Catholic school, and we did the homework and did the work, and he taught us, and that's how we continued our education. Mm-hmm. And then he went to the teacher with our books, our homework, and they kept us going with grade after grade, and we were taught. Homeschooled, as they would say now.
Yeah.
Was there a problem with the Collards getting enough food to feed extra people?
No.
Thank heaven, we had a lot of farmers living around us, and they supplied us with bread and milk and things like that, a lot of flour.
And they had a little garden in the back of their house, and they had good supplies of vegetables, potatoes. So we were never hungry.
Really hungry,
sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you able to bring any belongings with you, like a doll or a toy?
I think I had a doll with me. And I remember the story of going down the stairs when we were leaving. And I told our mother that I had a stomachache and I didn't want to go. But she said, no, you have to go with these people, and that's what we did.
I don't think I had anything with me, no toys. And I don't even remember having toys while we were there.
At the Collars?
Yeah.
I don't remember that either. Probably did, but don't know.
Did you ever get sick while you were in hiding?
Never.
Never.
Amazing,
Yeah.
but we never did.
What happened to your parents while you were in hiding?
They went to friends of theirs and stayed with them for the first few years, also in a little room up in the attic that they had, a little hiding place. But I was in Utrecht.
Yeah, and then later on they went to
Nettie's.
to Nettie's parents,
Right.
who lived 5 minutes away, and stayed with
Right.
them. So
But
we were always we didn't see them, but we were always in contact. You know, they knew that we were okay, which was
But we didn't know
great.
they were there. And after a few years, we didn't even, when we saw them later on, we didn't even know they were our parents. Because our father was a daredevil, and he worked with the underground. He went to farms on his bicycle with a false passport and went to get food for hidden flyers, Air Force guys, and helped whatever he could. He was very brazen and didn't care about the Nazis and the Germans, and he just went ahead. Sometimes they looked at his passport, took it away, and then he got another one from the underground.
Mm-hmm.
So he was great. He should have gotten a medal after the war.
Was it difficult for you when you were first separated from your parents?
In the beginning.
In the beginning, I'm sure it was.
But you know, being a child, you get used to other things. And the
Yeah.
Collars were very good to
They were
us. So
wonderful.
we probably considered them our
Our
parents
parents,
after
yeah.
a while.
That's right.
Did any Nazi soldiers ever question you or search the house where you were hiding?
They did search the house
Yeah.
several times, but
Mhm.
or we were upstairs in that little room in the attic, or at one time I remember the Nazis were coming, and I was in the living room, and Nettie's mother-in-law, I think,
No,
was
her
ill.
mother,
Her
her
mother
mother.
was always very sickly, and she was in a bed in the living room, and they took the sheets and draped them over her, and they shoved me under the bed. And while the Germans were in the rooms, she had some cookies, and so once in a while took a cookie and gave it to me under the bed, just to make sure that I wouldn't say anything or talk. So I ate the cookies and was saved.
And where were you when Lise was
I
hiding
was
there?
upstairs. I had gone upstairs in the hiding place. I made it there before she
Right.
could, so we were in different places at the time.
But we knew not to talk. Somehow
Yeah.
they told us when these bad men came, don't say anything, just be quiet. And that's pretty tough for little children, to be quiet and not say anything.
Were you scared during those times? Did you understand the danger?
Probably somewhat.
Somewhat, but not really badly enough
Right.
to have any after effects
Right.
later on. Life went on. That's the way life was
Yeah.
in those days.
Now, did anyone ever discover that you were hiding there?
Yes, they did come and search and found us one day. Somebody told them that there was, you know,
I think it was a
neighbor,
Dutch
maybe.
Nazi, yeah, the neighbor. Somebody. She had a list, I think, of children that they thought were in hiding, and it was like 90 children, as I remember the story that Nettie told us. And they said, you have the children here, and they have to go with us. And that's what happened. We went with them, and they were going to process us in Amsterdam, where we ended up. but we had our grandparents living there, and
we stayed with them actually.
for a night, yeah.
They brought us there because they were in some sort of a ghetto there too, so they knew exactly where we were, and we stayed with them one night, and then we were supposed to be going on a transport to some concentration camp probably.
Right.
But the underground knew, and they whisked us away from there before they could do that. So we were saved, and then they brought us back to the Calars again.
Yeah, and we went on the train actually
Just
to go back to Utrecht, and Nettie was there, and she took us
on her bicycle
one by one back to the Meern,
to her house.
And that's how we escaped.
Do you remember what the ghetto looked like or what things were like in there?
No, not really.
No.
I vaguely remember my grandmother being there, but that's about all I remember. Yeah, because they were actually taken away from there. My grandmother died because she had a stroke, I believe, and my grandfather was taken by the underground and went into hiding also.
Right.
In another part of the country.
Right. Yeah, in the south of Holland, where two of our uncles lived at that time, and they were also in hiding. And I'll remember the story of one of the uncles, his little daughter, our cousin. She was hidden by
in a
convent by nuns, and she stayed there for several years. They were hiding her, and then she survived the war too.
Yeah.
And ended up in Australia.
Did you have much contact with your parents while you were in hiding?
No. They, in the beginning, for the first 2 years, they didn't even know where we were. Right.
And then later on, when they went to the Collards' in-laws' house,
they saw us
a
few times,
yeah.
Not too much, because it would have been very risky, because we could talk maybe, or whatever would happen, and we saw them so once in a while, but we still didn't know who they were.
No.
Until the end of the war.
Because we called them Mr. and Mrs.
Van Ness.
Yeah, their adopted name for the time.
Right.
When you were rescued from the ghetto by the underground and returned to the Collards, what was that trip like for you to return?
I remember we were some person met us that we actually knew, Mr. Dayton, and he took us on a train. We went on a regular train with him, like, nobody knew who we were.
Yeah, it was a fun trip for us.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. It's something we hadn't done in a long time.
In years.
We hadn't been out on the street in a long time.
Exactly.
And then he took us someplace, and then after that, Nettie picked us up on her bicycle one by one and took us to her house.
And so she took one of you on the bicycle?
On the back of her bicycle.
And I think she had like a cape or a raincoat to sort of.
I'm not sure. I don't remember that.
I don't remember, but I sort of heard.
Probably.
That's what happened. The story, yeah. But we were 7, 9 years old.
So then, when you returned, you could not go outside anymore.
Not at all.
That's right. That was the end of going outside.
Outside, yes.
Even the neighbors.
We weren't allowed near the windows even, just in case somebody would walk by and see us.
Right.
So we were mostly we stayed upstairs. We didn't even come downstairs much anymore.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of hiding that way compared to how you were hiding the first part?
Well, you lost a lot of freedom. You had some freedom at least.
Yeah.
Some normalcy. But for a child to be always indoors, away from the windows, always be careful. You couldn't yell too loud or anything like that. Somebody might hear you.
Yeah. And you heard children outside playing and going to school. And we couldn't do that, but we knew there was something going on, and we just had to do what was told. And we did. And that saved our lives.
Did you keep hoping that this would end soon, or did you just take it a day at a time?
Probably day at a time.
Day at a time, if you know that.
As an adult, you probably would say, when is it going to end? But
to us it became a way of life already.
Yeah, this was the way it was. And these people are so wonderful that they just were like our parents. And we had our little chores to do, little schoolwork, and played.
Yeah, they kept us busy.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that stands out in your mind during those years in hiding? A special memory?
The only time I remember was when our parents were already in the same town with Nettie's parents, that our father picked us up one time and he says, come outside with us. There was a little river. He said, let's go and pick some flowers. I don't know if you remember that. No. It just stands out in my mind. And what a wonderful man he was. And we didn't know, of course, that he was our father. But that stands out in my mind.
That must have been in the beginning then, when we were still out.
Yeah, when we could still sort of sneak out so once in a while. And I don't know what you remember.
Yeah.
Plus the hiding, the catching us and taking to Amsterdam.
Yeah. And I always thought we went to the jail just before we went to Amsterdam. Overnight we stayed in the jail.
Oh, that's very possible too.
And then we went to Amsterdam and picked us. That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's very possible. And one of the prisoners gave us an apple. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were so...
We actually stayed in a cell.
We stayed in a cell, just for safety. And the prisoners were all nice and talking to us. And a few things that we remember.
How were you liberated from your hiding?
The Germans were fleeing, and they were really going by fast in cars and whatever they could, transportation they could find. And it's like word of mouth. It was all of a sudden we're free. They capitulated, and we all went outside.
Nettie told us, I remember, that Harry went to the priest in the church, and there was about 7 o'clock at night, and he would make a sign with his hat, I believe, if the war was over or not. And Nettie looked, and she didn't see any taking hat off and waving it. By 7 o'clock he was out there. But then he went back to the priest at the church, and by 9 o'clock he came out and he was waving his hat and yelled and said, "Oh, we're free now." That was on May 5th, 45. And we all came outside and everybody was dancing in the streets, and our parents then showed up and they said, "Oh, we're your parents, you're our children." So we were one big happy family, all of us.
Did you remember them when they told you that they were your parents?
I did, I believe.
Probably more than I did.
Yeah, because I was a couple of years older, so I did.
Yeah.
I knew that they were. I knew all along. I think that they were our parents. Yeah.
But I don't remember too much of them.
Were you able to resume your life?
Yeah. After we stayed with Nettie for a few months after the war, because our house in Utrecht was totally destroyed. They had taken the walls apart, and the store was totally destroyed. The upstairs where we lived, they took the carpet and the wood from the floors.
Yeah, they got it, the place.
They got it, the whole place, so we had no place to live, so Nettie took us for several months, all of us, parents. And then the government, the Dutch government had given Father money to rebuild the store. And that's what they did, and then we came back.
Well, I went to England for 6 months.
Oh, you did, that's right.
Yeah.
You did.
I went with a group of children who had suffered during the war, who were underweight, who were, you know, who had had a hard time. I don't know why you didn't go, but I went.
Yeah.
And 6 months I stayed in a camp, sort of a camp, for about 3 months, and then I was placed with a family there for about 3 months.
And was this while you were still staying with Nettie?
Well, you were home by that time.
Yeah, we were home by that time.
When you say that they gutted your home and business, just how much was it gutted?
Literally everything was taken out. It was just the bare walls left, that was it. Everything was taken out, the furniture, appliances, anything.
They had the Nazis living there.
They lived there, yeah.
When you were liberated, when the hat was waved on May 5th, were there still Germans in Holland at that time?
Well, probably more Dutch Nazis.
Yeah.
And I remember the women, the people grabbed them and they shaved their hair.
Heads and
They were bold, these women, so everybody could recognize them, that they were the bad guys.
Yeah, they were really hated more than the Germans even, because you know, there
because
was their own people who turned on them.
Yeah, they betrayed their own people.
Yeah, the Germans, I remember them fleeing, running,
right.
But after that we didn't see much of them anymore.
Yeah.
Did you continue any contact with Nettie and her husband?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes. They were like our parents, you know. We were one big family, really. We always stayed that way.
Yeah, we always celebrated birthdays and happy occasions. Yeah, we were very
saw
close.
each other on a regular basis,
and our parents were very close with them. So we always kept in touch, you know, throughout.
And even now, when we moved to America, we still... They come here, we go there. You know,
she has come more here than we have gone over there.
True, we were busy with our families, and
yeah, she always wanted to keep in touch with us. We're very close with Nettie. Harry died 15 years ago, but he was great man, and
he was.
Always kept in touch with Nettie. We were called our boys. That's what she called us. Her boys.
And what about other family members during the war? Did they have to hide too? Did anything happen to them, like aunts and uncles?
Most of them
didn't
flee. My father had six.
There were 8 of them.
8 of them, and one escaped to America. One aunt ended up in America. Some cousins escaped to South Africa, I believe.
Somewhere.
But most of them...
They all thought they were going to stay in Holland.
They all ended up in concentration camps.
With their children and died.
The whole family died,
There were only 3 of my father... Two of my father's siblings were left.
That survived the war,
One brother and one sister.
Right.
And the rest all went to concentration camps.
And my father, 3 of them.
Yeah.
And all their children, except a couple of cousins who came here to America finally, and some people in South Africa. My mother's family, they actually survived.
Yeah,
my
2
mother's
uncles.
Father survived, and 2 uncles and
2
their
brothers,
and their children.
Yeah,
they
all survived.
Do you know, while your parents were in hiding, if they had to stay in the house and not be seen, or did they have assumed names also?
They had assumed names, yes, and my mother stayed in all the time. My father, as you know, went out a lot. He had an assumed name and nobody knew he was Jewish. And he did, you know, a lot of work, underground work.
He did.
Were they at any time ever in danger of someone?
Not that I know of.
He was, because he had his
Right.
passport taken away many times, but through the underground got another passport and kept going.
He was just as much danger as all the other people that worked in the underground.
Right. But
Except that he was Jewish on top
Yeah,
of everything
even
else.
more so. Right.
Is there anything else that happened while you were in hiding that you have not shared?
No,
I don't know.
we got away at one time, and not really that I can think
of.
of.
Anything either, except
It's just, it happened so long ago, and there's certain things that stick in your mind, but a lot of things, you know, just you forget.
When did you come to America?
Oh, I came in '54.
and I came in 1957.
Yeah, when I got married.
Well, she got married. Yeah.
And you got married before coming or after?
No, after. After I went to nursing school first, almost immediately. Not immediately, I had to learn the language, and I became a counselor in a Girl Scout camp. I worked in a bookstore. I did a couple of other things. I took care of an elderly lady for a couple of months until I knew the language well enough to be able to go to school here, which I did in that September, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did actually the same thing. I came in 1957 for her wedding, and I stayed for half a year with her
In-laws.
with Hella's in-laws, and then I went to college in Massachusetts, finished a degree in physical education, and got married the last few months before I graduated. And then stayed, became a citizen.
Hello, what made you decide to come to America?
It was really my parents that decided. They decided there wasn't really that much for young Jewish people in Holland in particular. There were very few Jews left there. And they felt that I had an uncle and an aunt living here, and they accepted to sponsor me. And I was adventurous, I guess, so I said fine, and I went.
And then when you came for her wedding, you
Then,
decided to
yeah,
stay?
but my parents also decided, with me of course, that it probably would be better also to emigrate to this country. There was more future for us here.
Mm-hmm.
So I came for Hella's wedding, and then I stayed. Went to school.
And eventually our parents came too, but that was many years later.
Many years later, yeah. In
My mother
1970.
wasn't anxious to leave Holland,
No.
really. But my father wanted, he was sick at the time already, and he wanted her to be near us.
Right.
And then he died a few years later,
Yeah.
after they came. And my mother did last a few years longer, but then she became ill too. But they both died here in this country.
Right.
What kind of adjustments did you need to make moving to a new country and a new language?
But once you knew the language, it was okay.
Yeah, it wasn't
you know.
so bad.
No, you
Yeah,
went to school, you made
yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Good.
learned the language pretty fast,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
Because
but-
in school in Holland, it was mandatory in high school to learn 3-4 languages.
Yeah.
We had no choice. So you knew basic English, and then you go, for example, when I came to this country, I worked in a Girl Scout camp during the summer, and then a bookstore also, like you. And that we learned the language.
Nobody
pretty
spoke
quick.
Dutch, so we didn't
So
have
we
a
had no
choice.
choice.
It's not like
Yeah.
Spanish-speaking people, you know, there's so much of that going. They can get along with Spanish, but we couldn't get along with Dutch. So.
Right.
Did you tell anyone in America about your experience during the war when you first moved?
I did, yeah. What happened with me was when I was in college, Springfield College, there were a lot of, I belonged to a cosmopolitan club, which is a club for foreign students, and there were a lot of organizations in the town that were interested about the war and the Dutch life during the war. So I gave a lot of speeches to women clubs and churches and all kinds of groups, and I made a little extra money doing that. So that helped a lot. And I don't know what you did.
I went to nursing school, and basically in nursing school you live right in the hospital. It's like a dormitory type thing. So I really was in an enclosed area. Of course I got out and, did things with the girls, but, in those days nursing school is totally different from what it is now. You really worked, you just didn't go to school, you did both. You worked and went to school full time. And so that really took up all my time. I didn't have much time for extracurricular things. But I did go out, and my in-laws, at the time I wasn't married, but I stayed with them when I took time off, and I went to parties and stuff, just like everybody else.
And where was the nursing school?
Beth Israel in New York City.
Have you told your children about your war experiences?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, they know
Yes.
all about it. They know Nettie just as well as we do.
That's right. Nettie has
Our
told
children
them many
have been to
stories.
Holland and stayed at her house.
Yeah, many times.
And it's my son Brian who wrote that whole story. And
Yeah, he's been very involved in letting people know about the Holocaust and the war.
yeah, as a matter of fact, he probably told you he put on a whole program at his school. When Nettie was here, was it 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
We went there and the kids interviewed us, and it was a whole, made a whole day out of it actually.
Yeah.
It's very nice. It was the
And
fourth
the children
grade.
were very interested.
Yeah, they were
and
good.
they asked us questions.
Very intelligent questions.
Very
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. There was the fourth grade, I think, and there was
Fifth.
and a fifth. I like the fourth grade much
Yeah,
better.
they had
Well,
better questions.
Well, they were better prepared by their teachers, I think. That made all the
Yeah,
difference.
That's true. Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to try to explain to children what happened?
Yes, it is difficult because
Yeah.
it's something you have to experience,
Yeah.
really. It's almost impossible for anybody to imagine what it was like.
Right.
And we didn't even go through the worst of it, we weren't even in any concentration camp.
That's right.
Yeah.
What do you say to people who say that it never happened?
Well, just
I don't say
you know,
anything because it's
just-
useless to try
that's
to
right.
convince them.
They just
You can't.
They're just ignorant. That's all.
Yeah.
It did happen. There are lots and lots of pictures and movies about it, and if they don't understand that, then they're just ridiculous, stupid. That's all.
Have you been able to separate your feelings for Nazis from your feelings about German people?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
We
Still.
do realize that the young German people had nothing to do with what happened.
Right. But still.
But I still can't get myself to either go to Germany or I don't like
Same
the
here.
German being spoken.
No, if I hear tourists come and they speak German, it just turns my stomach for some obvious reason.
Yeah.
But I still
intellectually,
have
you
that
know
feeling.
that these people can't help what
No,
happened,
that's right.
but it's just a feeling.
And Germany is a beautiful country, but I cannot like hell, we cannot set a step in that country.
I won't even buy a German car.
Well, yeah. Right.
How did the Holocaust change your life?
I don't know if it did.
I don't know.
We were
Probably
too young,
in a way, psychologically, you must have been affected by it.
but it didn't really bother us.
No,
Probably after the
we
war,
went on.
but not throughout the years, because
It was difficult after the war, you know, getting adjusted to just life outside again, school, you know,
yeah,
we had a hard time in school. I did have a hard time
Yeah.
in school in the
Mhm.
beginning
Yeah.
because here I was 11, 12 years old,
Yeah.
and between 9 and 12, that's, you know, a big adjustment for a regular preteen, but if you haven't had any friends in all those years, and
yeah, that's
so,
right.
yeah.
It was tougher for you.
What one lesson do you think we should learn from remembering the Holocaust?
You should forget, because what happened once could happen again, and
We might forget some of the things that happened, but we never forgive. And that might sound harsh.
mhm,
That's the way I feel.
yeah, yeah,
It's very difficult to forgive
it is.
what they did.
Because it's unimaginable that people can do the things they actually did. And not just to the Jews, to a lot of other people still.
who were affected by it.
Right,
That's right.
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 Yeah. How human beings can treat each other that way is
And it still happens
horrible.
all the time. Maybe even worse now than it ever was. And I feel terrible for these people.
So do you see dangers even today in other parts of the
Definitely.
world?
Oh, definitely.
It's going on all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, there's never any, probably never will be any peace,
No.
which is a tough thing. Look at Ireland. How many years of war they had with England.
With themselves, within
With themselves,
themselves.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just there, it's all over
It's
the
all
world.
over.
Look
The
at
terrorists,
what's happening in Africa.
yeah,
know,
with people
Thousands
starving,
of people being killed. Nobody here seems to care much about it.
genocide.
Yeah, but it's
It's a
happening.
terrible thing. And
So yeah, no, you shouldn't forget, because, and you try to teach your children to be good human beings,
Right.
and that's about all you can
That's
do.
right. And we did a good job with our children.
I hope so. I think so.
We
yeah.
did. Thanks through Nettie and Hari Kolar.
And our parents.
They showed
yeah,
us how to be good to people.
how people can be,
Yeah,
how people should be, but yeah.
right.
Is that something that when you speak to the children in schools and places like that, is that something that you talk to them about?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
Do you have any last memory you would like to share?
Just
Well,
be good to each other.
yeah,
Maybe a person can be saved in the world. Even
Yeah.
if I can save one person, that's more than
that's
nothing.
right. And teach your children to be good people there.
Right.
That's the important part, you know, to be good. Doesn't matter what religion you are, what your beliefs are. I think being good is the most important thing.
Thank you for sharing your memories.
You're welcome.
Okay.